Hi, this is Beru, and I'm going to walk you through healing the heroic Halfus encounter from a Resto Druid perspective. In what is a bit of a departure from my other videos, you are going to see that I am actually not going to be raid healing for this fight, but rather responsible for keeping one of our 3 tanks alive. It's my opinion that the first 2 to 3 minutes of this particular encounter are the most challenging from a healing perspective, and that's largely because each tank is going to have a Drake on them. They're going to have some of the whelps on them, and they're going to take turns tanking Halfus, which means that at any point in the fight, they're going to have a stacking debuff on them that reduces the amount of healing they receive. To help combat this, as soon as my tank's Drake goes active, I pop into Tree of Life so that I get a little bit of extra healing at the early burst damage of the fight, but then also it gives me the opportunity to use Tree of Life again later on in the encounter. The way that I handle healing my tank is I keep a 3 stack of Life Bloom on them. I keep a rejuve on them, and you see here that I favor Healing Touch as the heal that I'm going to cast on them. The reason for this is that the tanks are really taking an enormous amount of damage early on in this encounter, and I have found some of my smaller, more mana efficient heals to just be insufficient to meet the damage coming into the tank. So I will use my larger heals and just make sure that I manage my mana throughout the fight so that I have enough mana to sustain it through the end of the encounter. I will do 2 other things during the encounter to my tank, and one of them is Swift Mend on cooldown. I will almost always universally Swift Mend underneath my tank so that he gets the benefit of not only the instant cast heal, but Efflorescence will be dropped underneath all 3 tanks so that it'll add a little bit of extra healing to all 3 of them. The other thing that I will do is keep Wild Growth on cooldown, but there's kind of 2 contingencies to this. One, if I don't have the global cooldown to cast Wild Growth and it will result in my tank's death, I will wait to cast it. And 2, if I'm moving, I will always cast Wild Growth if it's off of cooldown because it's an instant cast spell, and there's not a lot else that I can do while I'm moving if I've already got Life Bloom and Rejuve up on my tank. We 8 heal and 3 tank the fight. We assign 2 healers to each of the 3 tanks for the encounter, and then we have 2 discipline priests that are going to handle the raid healing for the fight. And they actually get to have a bit of fun on this encounter because they get to heal through atonement, which is basically a talent in the discipline tree that allows them to smite their target, and anyone within 16 yards of that target will receive healing from that smite. So they actually get to have, a good bit of fun just smiting away on Halfus. And it does a pretty good job at keeping the raid up once that first Drake is dead. All of the 4 Drakes that we release are dead, so we've gone ahead and bloodlusted. And as we approach 50%, I'm going to pop over into Tree of Life because I receive our first Hand of Protection in the encounter, and I want the extra benefit that Tree of Life gives me for the fight. But then also, because there's not a lot of damage outside of Halfus going into the tank, I am also able to cast a Tranquility during this first roar. And so it is sufficient to keep the tanks alive, and it adds a little bit of extra healing love to the raid. And a Tree of Life Tranquility is pretty beefy. I think mine heal for about 550,000 if I'm able to channel the entire cast. Right now, we're just finishing out the fight. I continue to make sure that my tank stays stable if he's tanking Halfus. If he's not tanking Halfus, I assist with the other tanks and toss out any extra heals that we may need on the raid after each roar here. Again, This is probably the easiest of the heroics that you'll encounter. It's a little challenging right as you start it and to get a feel for how to heal it because it is very difficult when you're learning the encounter to manage the damage that's coming into the tanks and keep your raid alive. But, once you get into it, it's really a fun encounter and, you get a little bit of a change of pace on the healing, and I have a good time with it. I hope you found this helpful, and please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions.